personal brand is not just who you when you meet the person. It comes from that email correspondence.
Yeah.
And she says you should audit your emails. So go through your last 5 emails and look how many warm words you used and how many competent words you used.
Oh, interesting.
And love is a warm word.
Yeah.
So then that brings itself an expectation from a personal brand. I think that's quite obvious.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, it's following the pecan rule, right? Like the pecan wheel, we build memories and we experience people based on the peak highs, the peak lows, and the end, whatever. So you can have an entire relationship or an email, right? You remember the high point in the email, the low point in the email, and the end. And the end is always warm, right? If it's always love Corrie, then it doesn't matter how abrasive or corrective I am during the email. I can actually be abrasive and at the end, love Corrie. And so something happens in their mind where they're like, oh, well, I must be misinterpreting the email, because even if I have been abrasive or confrontational,
shorter to the point.
Yeah, they'll look at it and they'll question their own interpretation of it, because I'm saying love Corrie. So then they'll say, maybe there's a warmer interpretation than the one that I've got in my head.
Welcome to the Kelly Lundberg podcast, Dr. Corrie.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you. I remember the first time I met you, we were at a conference and I spotted your shoes.
It was Marshall.
Yeah, no, at Stephen Covey. Stephen,
that's right.
Our
MR Covey, yeah.
Yes.
So the son.
Yes.
The Trust and Inspire guy.
Yes,
He's really, really cool. Did you get to meet him personally?
I didn't. I was there for this presentation.
He's actually just super authentic and really genuine and generous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love him. I've had the privilege of speaking to him a few times, just one-on-one, and yeah, he's just really, really cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I also really enjoyed our conversation. I remember exactly where we met. We were right next to the coffee machine. Yeah. And I said, what do you do? And you told me, and I noted your shoes, and I was like, we're going to connect. And I just knew,
because you're very fashion conscious and I'm very not fashion conscious. I've always struggled with my fashion identity. By the way, she dressed me today. So everything that I'm wearing today, with the exception of the shoes, which are mine, that's sacred space.
Yeah. Love your Vans.
Kelly has dressed me, and actually I'm so grateful for it, because it is not an area of competence for me.
Yeah. So, but that wasn't even how it started. I just always thought, what, we're going to connect. We connected on LinkedIn after that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, because you said, let's have a glass of wine or do something.
Yeah,
it was more that started it. And then our conversations then moved into the style aspect.
That's
You'd
right.
said, I'm going to update my personal brand. I really feel, and I had a little look at the website and I was like, I can see where I can add some pointers to that. And then the style piece, we had a great session out for getting some looks for your photo shoot.
No, it was amazing actually, because I've never had somebody just shop for me or with me before. And so my wife was with us, and we were walking into the mall, and she goes, "What are you expecting?" I said, "I have no idea. I'm hoping that we come out with like some new clothes that help me to feel like I'm finally dressing what I actually am."
Yeah.
And because I've always felt just a little bit anachronistic with, my own fashion choices. Not felt confident in that at all, but yeah, it was very helpful.
And then that leads into how confident you are in your photography, and you're really taking it to the next level. You've got a new website coming out.
Yeah. Well, I've never had confidence problems on stage or in boardrooms or whatever. Like for me to be on stage, I immediately drop into flow. I'm completely confident in that environment. I love it. I get a lot of energy there. It's when I step off stage and I'm like, oh, right, there's people and I have to communicate with them one-on-one, and like, oh, not quite. That's when I become a little bit less Yeah.
Maybe should we give people a backstory as to who you are and how you got into what it is you're doing? A little intro.
Right. Okay. The Coles notes. I started in my early 20s. When I was 23, I moved to Estonia, started my first 5 companies there as a serial entrepreneur, buried 1, exited 4, moved to Yemen, started a couple of new companies there, was there for 5 years, left a year into the civil war and moved to Dubai. I've been in Dubai now almost 12 years. Started a couple of more companies here. My last exit was 8 years ago. And now I've earned the right to just do whatever I want. So I have an employee roster of 1. I have a very small team that helps me with marketing and media.
Yep.
And I am an executive coach. So I write books, I do leadership training, and I do speaking. But what gives me the most amount of life is coaching. I love executive coaching because I get to be in those rooms with incredibly powerful people, and and they need opportunity for vulnerability and authenticity that they very, very rarely get in their lines of work.
How do they know they need a coach? Because I think when I first hired my first ever coach, I didn't know I needed one. And I stumbled upon a free call with someone, and that led to it. And then it opened up a whole world. And I think, especially for maybe some of the executive positions that you're doing, they don't know that they need one, or they're told to have one, or
that's
how does
correct.
It work?
Well, listen, it depends on where you are in the world, because that's not true of the Fortune 500 and the FTSE 100, right? The majority of the CXOs in the FTSE 100 have coaches. That's how they got there. That's how they stay there. Okay. The majority of the CXOs in the Fortune 500 have coaches, right? That's how you get there. It's just in this part of the world, in this region, where there's still an association of coaching with therapy. Right. So most of my clients, they don't know they need a coach because they think it's a form of therapy. It's not. If you're broken and you need to be fixed, go find a therapist. Okay. That's not my job. My job is to turn talent into Olympians. Okay. So it makes sense when you look at it through that lens. If you're a talented athlete and you think you might have Olympic talent, what do? You get a coach. Okay. And that's the same with every major industry, right? Like every world-class violin player has a coach. Every world-class surgeon has a coach, and every world-class business leader has a coach, right? That's how they get there. That's how they stay there. And it's the same in every industry. Humans perform at their very best when they're with someone that understands the game just as well as they can play it.
Do you think it's accountability as well as that? Yeah,
I really like, there's a book just out called Becoming Coachable by friends of mine, Scott, Jacqueline, and Marshall. And all of them, they clarify it really, really easily. There are 4 basic ingredients to coachability. There's the openness to change, the openness to feedback, the openness to take action, and the openness to be accountable. But the thing is that once you're at the top of your game, you're the CFO in a group of companies with 50,000 employees. Who are you accountable to? Nobody knows the finance game better than you do. Not even the CFO. The CFO can read the reports, but doesn't really understand the numbers as well as the CEO can read the reports, but doesn't understand the numbers as well as the CFO does. There's no one really to be accountable to except the board of directors. And we know numbers don't lie, but they can be made to tell incredible stories. So accountability really at that level is something that you choose. You choose for yourself, because that's how Olympic athletes become Olympic. They become accountable, and it is by choice that they become accountable, because they know that that's their only way. That's the only hope they have of finding out what they're truly capable of.
And that sort of journey, does it vary from person to person, or do you say, no, and if you want to get the results, we're in it for a year, or we're in it for 6 months, or?
Yeah, look, my preference is a minimum of 6 months. Only because it takes that long to develop momentum. I need to understand who I'm working with. Right? And I need to know what their limitations are, what their limiting beliefs are, what their blind spots are, and I need to get to the place where we have enough hours in relationship that they're going to be transparent with me. If they're going to be transparent and authentic with me, we can move fast. Often we need time to get there. But I've found the majority of my CXOs, they rush for accountability. They rush for authenticity and transparency because they have no one else to talk to about any of this stuff. Like, I've had a couple of my CEO clients. One of my CEO clients a couple of years ago, obviously not going to mention names, but
of course,
6,500 employees, comes to me and he says, Corrie, my CIO just brought me a $13 million project for digital transformation, and I can't read the bloody thing. But I don't know who to talk to about that. Like, I can't tell the executive committee that, I don't really understand the 4th Industrial Revolution or artificial intelligence or blockchain or any of this stuff that he's got in this proposal. And can't tell the board of directors, I have no idea what I'm doing here, and I'm supposed to sign off on this, but I don't understand it. So I was like, and it's those things, right? Like, the world is just changing so fast that so many of our executives, they've earned the right to be there, with 30 years of incredible productivity in a world that is fast dissolving. Right? That the world that earned them the right to be there isn't there anymore. Now it's very fast, right? The kind of complexity and speed at which they're expected to move is nothing like the world that they mastered in order to get there. So who do they talk to about those vulnerabilities and those insecurities? And without fail, almost everybody has them, right? Everybody's got some sort of blind spot or insecurity. And often it's just imposter syndrome, like, am I really supposed to be here? Like, am I
even
really
at that level?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, it happens quite a lot. And it's just so refreshing for them to have somebody in their life who's completely objective, who's outside of the organizational structure, who isn't reporting on them to HR or the board, and who's just saying, okay, just tell me everything. And whatever you want to work on, we'll work on that. Because if you're actually getting tactics and strategies that will help you, you're going to become much more productive, powerful, empathetic, communicative, and all of that. And that's going to impact the bottom line of your organization. Not only are you going to live a healthier and happier and statistically longer life, if you have that, but your company is going to perform better as well. So the ROI on coaching is, I don't know, easily about 40x at that level. If you look at ICF, the numbers are somewhere between 550 and 780, but I'm pretty sure at a executive level, it's much, much higher than that.
And how do you then, I say, keep up with that as well? I guess from the, you obviously have a coach.
Of course.
And, so you'll go and have conversations with them. Do you, you write books, do you read, do you conference? Like, how do you keep up on that fast-pacedness that can also support them?
I love ICF, okay? The International Coaching Federation. But you can't just get an ICF certification and walk into a CEO office and expect to coach. It's not going to work, right? Because look, most of the CEOs that I work with, they are very competent. That's how they got there. They're competent, they're fast, they're decisive, they know what they're doing. And if you walk into their office and say, what do you think you should do? And what haven't you tried today? And you just list off those 10 questions, they're going to kick you out so fast, right? This is a $30,000 hour. Get out of my office if you can't help me, right? Because if I knew what to do and if I had thought of everything and if I had explored all of my options, I would have done all of that already. Okay, so you have to come in with tactics. You have to come in with acumen, some level of expertise and experience. So for me, I'm an addicted learner. I'm addicted to competencies is what it is. And that's really probably the most defining thing about me. I'm curious about everything. And every once in a while, I satisfy my curiosity with a PhD or writing a book.
As you do.
Yeah. I satisfy my curiosity by getting certification in artificial intelligence from MIT and finance at Harvard, because that's my weekend. That's my
enjoy that.
Yeah, I love that. And so I don't find staying on top of things very difficult. I don't find coming in, adding value every time difficult. I find that I'm always just a step or two ahead because they have access to somebody that's consistently every day addicted to learning at a postgraduate level in all areas of business and psychology. So for me to walk in and add value is not difficult at all. I've learned something this week that I can apply to whatever it is that you're going through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that piece, when did you have a coach when you set up all your businesses? Was that?
I did. We didn't call it coaching at that time. In the early 2000s in Estonia, it was post-Soviet and pre-technocrat. So there were no VCs, there were no accelerators, no incubators. None of that has been invented at that time.
Yeah.
Right. So this was prior to Vision 5.9 for those of you who know Estonia. Right. So it was like early days. So it was just me in the street. And so entrepreneurship was really just kind of like winging it and throwing money at ideas and hoping that some of it sticks. And honestly, the first year was really, really hard. But my success and my rapid success, I credit to my mentors. And they were my coaches, but actually, functionally speaking, they were just men and women that were ahead of me on the curve, that I respected, that I liked. And I would just offer to buy them coffee or dinner and just hang out with them and say, what are you reading? And tell me what I should do about this, and ask. And they loved being helpful. Right? That became the coaching industry now it's a whole industry, and we charge for it, and we rightfully charge for it. It's very good. And my mentors, I probably owe you a lot of money. I'm not shying away from that.
More than just a dinner.
You know who you are. I've listed your names in my book, right? So those are documented. I've always had mentors and mentors, coaches, leaders, whatever. I've had people that are further along than I am in the curve, more intelligent than I am in certain areas of life. And nobody's going to be more intelligent than you at everything, right? But at certain things, you need mentoring, you need coaching, because we're better together as humans.
Yeah. I love that. Speaking of love, new book.
Yes.
I feel like we're on a morning daytime show.
Yeah, fantastic. Right? I brought a new book. I'm so proud.
I didn't know that you write books every year.
Yeah.
You.
Well, my wife has forbidden me from getting another doctorate degree, so...
Is that because every weekend's taken up with?
No, it's because it looks silly on LinkedIn. I mean, I've got 2 masters and 2 doctorates. Don't be impressed, by the way. That's my hobby, right? Like I don't watch football. I don't collect classic cars. I read, I write journal articles, and every once in a while I collect a degree. But after you've collected a number of degrees and a number of certifications, you kind of need to stop.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise it just looks ridiculous. If you looked at my LinkedIn page, it's a week long.
Yeah.
It's bad. So now I'm thinking I need other creative ways to gather information. And so for me, I love the research process and I love the writing process. And I still hold a chair as a professor of strategic management at Monarch School of Business in Switzerland. So that keeps me, focused on making sure that I'm representing academically whatever it is that I'm researching. But now, instead of my research resulting in a degree, I put it into a book. Yeah.
So the latest book?
The latest book is Love at Work. Actually, all of my books are products of my own frustration with the world. So I just become really deeply irritated about something, and then I write a book about it. So a couple of years ago, so Spartan CEO was the result of having like incredible CEO coaching clients, right? Who are just amazing, high performing, really, really on the ball, really sharp, really highly productive. And then having really mediocre CEO coaching clients. And I was like, oh man, and it didn't seem that the number of people in your organization or your title or the size of your office had any indication at all of whether you were going to be like a high performing CEO or kind of a mediocre performing CEO. And so I was like, I started to think deeply about what actually are the differentiators and drivers between high performing and mediocre performing executives. And so I wrote those into a book, and it's the 6 pillars of executive performance. It's called Spartan CEO. And I was very fortunate to have Joe DeCina, who's the founder and global CEO of Spartan Race, which I love to do. I run the trifecta every year. So I use that as kind of like an Uber story to bring into the book. But that was my first frustration with the world was, why are some of my coaching clients just not great?
Yeah.
And some of them are just amazing. So those are the 6 pillars. Then my second book was Business is Personal. And my frustration there was the fact that people would say, oh, it's not personal, it's just business. You've heard the phrase, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, we're going to go with someone else this time, but it's not personal, it's just business. Well, that's not true. It's not true. It's never been true, and it'll never be true. Every business decision that's ever been made takes resources from one set of families and moves it to another set of families. We call those families we call it a business, but actually it's an economic tribe, right? You might have 1,000 families, each of which is sending a representative to play an economic game every day. But yeah, every business decision moves resources from one set of families to another and maybe robs it from a third set that we can't even see. Okay, so business is personal. It'll always be personal. And every single one of us is dedicating half of our lives every day to work, right? And that's not other than your life. It is your life. It is personal. Anything you're doing with half of your life every day should be as meaningful as possible, right? So yeah, business is personal, whether individually or collectively.
And say that about branding as well, though. The future of business is personal because it's your personal brand is what people buy into.
100%.
You are personal.
Yes. Yeah. You are your brand. You are your message.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess I'm really honored to be in the place where I can just absolutely represent myself. Because I find that so many people have to pretend to be something a little bit different than what they actually are in order to get the job done. And I don't have to do that. I don't need more accolades. I don't need more success. I'm actually doing very well. And it allows me to pick fights like the one that I pick in Love at Work, right? So my irritation with the world that led to this was about, I don't know, maybe a year ago. I was talking to the top 55 senior managers and executives at Serco. Large multinational, I think it's 70,000 employees or 50 years old or something like that. Massive company. And I was in front of them. We were just talking about emotional intelligence and connecting with each other in leadership and employee engagement and why, how we get people to really buy into what they're doing with their lives every day. And I said from the stage, and it was really kind of uncalculated, I said, why can't we all just love each other? Right? And wouldn't you do better? Wouldn't you perform better if you knew for a fact that the person that was working next to you loved you and had your back? And it was a totally uncalculated moment. And I was like, on the stage, I'm thinking, oh, shit, did I really say that? Right? And I was kind of like,
worried what you said?
I was worried. Internally, I'm worried. Externally, I'm owning it. I'm buying in, right? I'm buying into my own stuff. I'm looking around and immediately I'm looking for eye contact and I'm looking for the nods, right? I'm looking for the eyebrows going up, going, yeah. Yeah. And so I asked, how many of you, your experience of work would improve, the quality of your life would improve if you knew for a fact that there were 3 people in this room that completely loved you and had your back? Like everybody's hands go up. And I'm like, so why aren't we talking about that? And so I wrote a book about it. It's born out of this frustration that the highest potential quality of relationship we have between humans, love, right, is intentionally exiled from the place where we spend the most time with each other. Work. That doesn't seem right to me.
So what are some of the things that people can be doing to, I mean, I know to read the book. But if you're going to start to develop that,
100%,
what should you do?
Well, I don't recommend you walk into your room and just start telling everybody you love them. Okay, like you walk into the office, I love you, Susie. I love you, Jerry. I love you, Tom. Like
feeling like weirdo.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. HR is going to call you in.
Yeah.
You're going to have a discussion, right? So there are definitely some nuances that can be brought in. One of them is just becoming a lot more affective, a lot more connecting, recognizing that the other people in your office are there just like you for reasons that have nothing to do with the office, right? You're not there because you're passionate about forms or Excel spreadsheets or writing another PowerPoint presentation. No, none of you are there for that. You're there because you're passionate about your family, about your dreams, about your career aspirations, about your goals that have nothing to do with the day-to-day tasks. And all of you can bond on that. You can bond by connecting about the fact that you're there to feed each other's families and educate each other's kids and, put gas on each other's cars and food on each other's plates. And you do that by playing an economic game together. But yeah, very practically speaking, one of the things I did a few months ago, and I kind of lost my breath at the time when I started doing it, I just made a decision one day while I was writing the book. I was like, I'm just going to do this. Every single email I've sent out, I think probably since March 20th of this year, 2023, I sign off, love Corrie. That's it. And I just decided, I said, line in the sand, I am not going to sign any of my emails with sincerely or best wishes. Like, no, none of that. Just love Corrie. Everything. Strangers, CEOs, customers, like procurement managers that I've never met before, engineers. I'm writing love Corrie. Nobody seems to mind, by the way. I've been doing this for months. There's like thousands of emails.
Has anyone commented on it?
No. Well, people have said that, how much they like it.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever said, well, I think you're going too far, or you're getting a little personal there, Corrie. There's been no negative response at all. I've not been reported to a single HR business partner that I'm aware of. And I've worked probably, since I started doing that, I've worked in 30 plus companies, and I've been communicating with 100 plus more, and just writing love at the end of everything, from the group CEO right down to, the secretary that's arranging a meeting, right? Like, yeah, it's pretty cool. So that's something that I think is very easy.
Yeah.
Just sign off all your emails with love and see what happens when you inject just the word into the formal discourse a little bit.
In another book, Vanessa Van Edwards' book, Cues, which I find really interesting, CUES, is about, she says that you should do an audit on your emails.
Nice.
And, charisma comes from, her opinion, the combination of warmth and competence. Right. And when you combine both of those, you get someone who is charismatic, who we want to spend more time with, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
So from a personal branding perspective, I find this curious because, a personal brand is not just who you when you meet the person. It comes from that email correspondence.
Yeah.
And she says you should audit your emails. So go through your last 5 emails and look how many warm words you used and how many competent words you used.
Oh, interesting.
And love is a warm word.
Yeah.
So then that brings itself an expectation from a personal brand. I think that's quite obvious.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, it's following the pecan rule, right? Like the pecan wheel, we build memories and we experience people based on the peak highs, the peak lows, and the end, whatever. So you can have an entire relationship or an email, right? You remember the high point in the email, the low point in the email, and the end. And the end is always warm, right? If it's always love Corrie, then it doesn't matter how abrasive or corrective I am during the email. I can actually be abrasive and at the end love Corrie. And so something happens in their mind where they're like, oh, well, I must be misinterpreting the email, because even if I have been abrasive or confrontational,
shorter to the point,
yeah, they'll look at it and they'll question their own interpretation of it, because I'm saying love Corrie. So then they'll say, maybe there's a warmer interpretation than the one that I've got in my head.
Yeah.
So they'll actually default toward the warmest potential interpretation of the email. So even if I was unintentionally abrasive or obtuse in the email, they might read love Corrie and think, oh, well, he couldn't have meant what I thought he meant, because, well, he's just said he loves me, right? With love. And what's the implied meaning here? Yes, with love. I've written all of this with love. Okay, well, what's the most warm, loving interpretation I can possibly read this email through? And I think that in a small way is kind of it's an indicator of what I want businesses to do.
Yeah.
I want us to be thinking, I want boards of directors to be thinking, what is the most loving way for us to use the resources that are available to us? I want CEOs to be thinking, what is the most loving strategy I can pursue for profit? I want CIOs to be thinking, what is the most loving way to interpret this data set? And I think we can insert like a little love bias into everything that we're doing in the office. And I think I know for a fact, because I've done the research on it, I've documented, it's profitable. Okay, humans who are working in environments where they feel loved and supported, they work harder. They take 2 less leave days every year. They work an extra hour a week of discretionary effort. There's 41% less absenteeism, 59% less turnover, 17% higher performance. When they work in those environments, the company makes more money. And the employees, they have employees who feel that they're loved and supported. They get more opportunities for advancements and promotions than those who don't, because they perform better, right? And they live healthier lives. They live happier lives. And now we're finding out that they statistically live longer lives. And wouldn't you want to be able to do that? If you could find a way to make more money and help everybody in your company live a longer life, would you want to do that? Absolutely. All right.
Everyone would.
Yeah. So those CEOs that are still leading by fear are valuing something more than money.
What are they valuing?
Well, it's a good question. Yeah.
Answer.
No, I wouldn't presume to know the mind of a CEO.
I guess they're all different.
True.
Publishing your book, we talked about this just before we came on, about self-publishing, getting a book out there. Writing a book is great for your personal brand, and it's great for your visibility. Yeah. It's not something that makes money, though. I think the reality, if we're being honest, and here as having self-published before, even publishers, I think, will have this idea that we could be the next J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, of course. Everybody, thinks their baby's the cutest, right? Right? Oh, my baby's cuter than all the other babies in the world, right? And actually, that's probably not true. 2% of all of the musicians make all of the money from music. 2% of all of the surgeons make all of the money from specialized surgery. 2% of all of the coaches make the high-end level coaching money. 2% of all of the authors make the money from books, right? So and it's true in almost every industry, that 2% is going to make like 80% of all of the income from that industry. 2% of the FMCG brands make all of the money from FMCG. So it's true in almost every industry that you have that. And the chances are very low that your book is going to be in those 2%. And it may be that your baby is the cutest baby on the planet, objectively speaking, but not enough people are going to interact with pictures of your baby to ever even know that.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, what you need to know is you need to know what your baby actually is, right? So my book, it stems from this not idea, from the truth that the word author and the word authority are the same word. So now when I go into like a CHRO's office or a GC CEO's office, and I say, hey, listen, what? They say, what do you want to talk about? I say, I want to talk about love at work because I wrote the book on it, and here it is. I want to talk about executive performance. I wrote the book on that too. Here it is. And it gives you, it's a very good starting place for conversation. It's also a very good jumping off place for trust, because I can tell you, look, I've written the book on, it's here. You don't have to get me to do any of this. I don't have to coach any of your executives. I don't have to train any of your leaders. Read the book, implement it. You'll make the money. Okay, almost everything I'm going to do with you is here. It's documented. It costs $30 and it's on your table. In fact, you don't even have to spend the $30. I'm giving it to you for free. I will sign it. It's worth more than the money that you didn't pay for it. And you have all of the information. Implement this, you will be more profitable. And that builds a tremendous amount of trust, right? So from a personal branding perspective, it makes sense. Write your book. Mm-hmm. If that's your message, get it out for a couple of different reasons. One is that author authority positioning, right? It helps you with your personal branding. Secondly, it helps you with your clarity of thought, right? In the process of writing, you're going to digest and redigest all of the information that's available on that particular topic. And you're going to hone and clarify your particular message in that topic. Yeah. So that by the time you've written the book, you've read it a dozen times, right? Not only have you written the book on that subject, but you've read that book 12 times or more in the process of writing it. So nobody knows that material better than you. Then you can actually walk into those offices with confidence.
Do you think if you were a speaker, you get paid more because you've got a book?
Yeah, 100%.
I believe too, but that kind of confirmation for those that are listening and watching going, okay, you think that the book's going to make you money. It's actually what comes out of having published a book.
That's right. Yeah, so all of my books to date are break even. whatever, any money that they generate, like I've made money on the last 3 books, not this one, but I've made money on the last 3 books, and they've gotten into black on the publication and self-publication. And then whatever money I make from them, I use to print more books or to do advertising, marketing, publication. So the book itself isn't ever income generating.
Yeah.
It's just marketing, pure marketing.
What other things do you think you've done when it comes to your personal brand that makes you stand out, that these CEOs are coming to you and not going to someone else?
Shoes.
Really?
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times, probably 12 times just in the last 6 weeks, where I've walked onto stage or I've walked into an HR conference or into a private conference, and somebody comes up to me and goes, the shoes, I love the shoes. Or they'll pull somebody else and say, hey, come here, it's the guy with the shoes. It's the guy. So they don't even know my name, right? But they know it's the guy with the shoes.
Yeah.
The guy that'll wear like a tailored suit and $50 Vans. This has become part of my personal brand for sure, is the Vans.
And makes it stand out and make...
Yeah, definitely.
In the industry of coaching, I've worked with quite a few. I think there's a lot of people that actually think, okay, I've done one thing, I think I can be a coach and coach someone else.
Right.
It's quite a saturated industry, would you say?
There's no doubt. You can throw a rock anywhere in Dubai and hit a coach.
Yeah.
Right? Because everybody...
Don't do that, by the way.
No, don't throw rocks at people. That's mean. That's mean. During COVID, right, thousands of people lost their jobs, and ICF was online handing out certifications in coaching, and everybody could pivot to coaching. One of the myths that's been perpetuated because of that is that anyone can coach anyone else in anything.
Okay.
And that's abjectly not true, right? And I mean, it doesn't take much to think, to recognize this, right? Not just any football coach can coach an Olympic football team. You can't just take any swim coach and put them in front of an Olympic swimmer and say, coach this swim. It's not going to work, okay? At the highest level of play in any game, you need a coach that knows the game as well as the player can play it. So Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, both phenomenal footballers. They both have coaches. You think either of those coaches can play football as well as they can? No, of course not. But they can coach at that level. So there's a certain amount of industrial arrogance in the coaching world that says that anyone can coach anyone else in anything, and that's not true. I think at a mid-level management layer, probably it's okay, because mid-level managers still have senior executives to go to for technical support or for, vulnerability or insecurity in terms of competence. Hey, I've never done this before. Hey, I don't know how to do this. They have somebody up line to talk to. But at the C-suite, you don't. As soon as you become the CFO, that's it. You're the highest level in finance. Yeah. As soon as you become the CMO, that's it. You're the highest level in marketing. Who are you going to go to? Who are you going to talk to? You need somebody that has, and then if you're going to have a coach, the coach can't just come in and say, well, what haven't you tried? Well, I know what I haven't tried, right? I know, like I've ideated all of my ideas. That's how I got to CMO. That's how I became the CDO of a multi-billion-dollar organization, right? It's not going to work, those kinds of questions. You have to have the acumen to step in and say, okay, like I've studied marketing. I know the basic processes. I've worked in a number of different industries in marketing. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? I've seen at Microsoft, they did this. And I saw at Apple, they did that. And when I was working with the United Nations, this is what we tried. So maybe have you tried that? And that kind of experiential learning becomes really, really important at the C-suite level. And that's why executive coaches, not what I would call non-advisory coach. That's really what ICF is representing, is a whole field called non-advisory coaching.
Right.
And there's great benefit to that at a mid-level management layer. But above that, when you're talking about your senior executives, it hits its limits very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. And you can, if you ask 100 coaches, for example, Scott Osmond and Jacqueline Lane, who are leading 100 coaches, which was founded by Marshall Goldsmith, they would tell you that the majority, if not all of their coaches, are advisory coaches. They have experience, they have education, they have an MBA at a minimum. They've been, 20 years in their industry or in their verticals at a minimum before they get to coach at that level. So yeah, there's a huge vacuum of that level of coach here in the UAE for sure. But there's an industrial arrogance that goes alongside it that says that anybody can coach anybody in anything. And at an Olympic level, you will never see an Olympic coach ask their athlete, what do you think you should do? How do you think you should approach this?
That's a really interesting perspective, but true. In that space, I believe, in order to get the best, that it's not all about the answers are in you.
Yeah, that's right. No, humans have always been better together. We've been better together with two different influences: coaches and competitors.
Yeah,
right. There's no doubt. Like Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. I saw an interview once with Ronaldo where he was asked about Messi. Like, are you guys friends? And he's like, no, we've never been to dinner. And I'm paraphrasing badly, but he's like, no, we've never been to dinner together, but I don't see why we couldn't, because, I'm undoubtedly a better footballer because he exists.
Because there's that healthy competition.
Yeah, look, the two of them, they only meet on the field 1 or 2 times a year. That's it. They're not ever direct competitors, ever. But they've been passing the Ballon d'Or back and forth between each other they did it for like a decade or more. And it's that kind of competition where we see, like, it wasn't just Apple versus Microsoft. It was Steve Jobs, right, versus Bill Gates, right? And these were personal rivalries. And the same thing happened in 1997 when Apple was like 90 days away from insolvency. It was Bill Gates that stepped in and bought 1/3 of Apple's preferred stock and rescued the company. And people asked Bill, like, why would you do that? And Bill's like, well, if Apple dies, then Microsoft will never know what it's capable of. Right,
love that.
That kind of health, and it goes right back to like Raffaello and Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel and their healthy debate over who was the best painter of their age. Right, like that competitive landscape drives all of humanity forward. Right, even the space race between the Americans and the Russians. And anyway, there's some of that in coaching. We're only going to know what we're capable of if we have somebody right next to us that we think is competent in the same thing that we're trying to be capable, telling us, yeah, you can push a little further than you think you can. Yeah. And you can probably do it. And then we become convinced, yeah, I can probably do it. And then we do it. Right. And then we're surprised. And then the coach is like, oh yeah, good job. Right. But that's how world records get broken. That's how we keep lifting more than any human has ever lifted before and running faster than any human has ever run before, is because there's a coach right next to that athlete saying, you can probably do something that's never been done before. I know enough of the game to know that you're capable of doing something that's never been done.
How do your clients find you then? Is it word of mouth or?
Typically so, yeah. Word of mouth, sometimes through the CHRO. I speak at a lot of HR conferences, and so CHROs or HR directors will bring me in and introduce me to their C-suite. Sometimes it's the C-suite themselves. I'll meet them out running Spartan races or something, and and then they'll bring me in. So usually it's either one way or the other, and then it doesn't matter which way I come in, we got to go through procurement, right? So there's always the procurement.
There's always someone stuff in there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, people usually find out through word of mouth, or actually more recently, a number of my clients have just been Googling, who's the top business coach in the UAE, and then they find me because it's all over the internet. And I'll be really honest with you, I have no idea how to even defend that title. There's no criteria by which one would even make that particular claim. And yet, there it is. It was said of me by a couple of PR firms, and then, like Forbes and Entrepreneur Magazine and SHRM and CIPD. I'm very honored by it. But I had this conversation with Marshall Goldsmith last year, because he's got on his book, it says the world's #1 executive coach. I was like, Marshall, I don't know how to do that, man. Like, I've got this claim on my website. And he says, no. He says, you're right. There's no criteria by which I could even defend that. Plus, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But you know what it does? It means that when people are Googling the best executive coach in the world, they're going to find me or Mark Thompson or Tony Robbins, right? And then he's like, he's a pretty humble guy. He's like, but if they choose me, then I'm going to be in their office, and they might have brought me in as a hood ornament because they just want to be coached by the best in the world. But what they don't know is that they're going to have to tie their life to me for a year. And I know what I'm capable of, and they have no idea.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and that for me, that gives me all of that. So when people are Googling that, and that's how some people have found me over the last number of months now, is who's the best business coach in the UAE, and I shy away from the claim, but you know what it does is it gets me into the rooms of people that really, really need me. Mm-hmm. So I don't actually care then how I got there. What matters is that I'm in front of a leader that's got 90,000 families in their care, and they're asking me for tactics that will help to make them more profitable, a more caring and loving manager, a more caring and loving leader, to help them to see around corners of disruption and innovation in their industry. And they're transparent with me and authentic with me in a way that gives me latitude to help them to make very, very difficult, very complex, and very risky decisions. And I'm honored by that. And they might not know what I can do in that year that we're going to spend together, but I do.
Do any of them think about their personal brand?
Oh yeah, lots actually. Yeah. Most of my executive clients, they recognize, look, there's 23% fewer executive roles on the planet now than there were 30 years ago, and they're paying 900% more than they were.
And why is it like
30 years? Because of consolidation, mergers and acquisitions, globalization, regionalization. They're just bringing everything together, and so because C-suite positions are very expensive, so having fewer of them makes it
more money.
Yeah, but then we're just paying the fewer more. Right?
Oh, okay, because it's not
exactly.
100%.
So it ends up not being cheaper. We're just paying them more. That's all. But there are fewer, right? So the competition for those C-suite positions is much higher. And so getting into the position is the first hurdle. Staying in the position is the second. And so I find that personal branding is more and more becoming a delimiter of success at those levels. So when you're at N-1, N-2, you really need to be conscious of what you're putting on social media, that you are putting stuff onto social media, that you are visible, thought leading, presentable. Remember, we're humans, not resources, right? So even the hiring body, they eat with their eyes first. And the ATS, the applicant tracking system that's going to sort through your CV, is going to look for certain keywords. And if they're not there, or if they're clouded around with other keywords that shouldn't be there, you're never going to get seen by a human. That's it. So you need to know how to write for the ATS, and you need to know how to present yourself for other people that are looking. Because once you get to the C-suite, you're not just the CFO, you're the brand, right? You're not just the CMO, you're not just the CHRO, you're the brand. And we ask that question when we're hiring onto the C-suite before we even interview you. So we're going to be stalking you for the last probably year and a half, 2 years on your social media to find out if you actually are the brand. So what are you saying? Who are you saying it to? How are you saying it? And if you're aiming for the C-suite, if you really do want to be competitive for that top role, you have to be conscious of that early.
Because it's nearly like you don't see anything, you'll make an opinion.
That's right.
So it goes both ways, isn't it? Well, you think you don't say something, then it doesn't matter. But equally, that says, I think, sometimes even more.
Yeah, it's better to say something, and it's extremely important that you mind what you say. Yeah, it matters a lot. So personal branding, I think personal branding and executive branding, once you're in the role, is extremely important, not just to the individual who's trying to get the job, but to the company. Because remember, for every C-suiter that's in the company, you're a spokesperson. You are the brand, right? Because all you need to do, you just need to screw up one time and they say, oh, the CFO of Unilever said this. It's like, oh, man, but I'm supposed to be a finance guy, right? Like, and it's, so it becomes personal branding and executive branding become part of the risk structure of the organization at that level.
So you said a book every year.
Yep. What's
been the annoyance or the frustration for the next one? Is it there?
Yeah, it is actually. I've already started writing it. It's called Undistractable. And it's born out of my frustration with the fact that our ancestors have not prepared us to live in the world that we've created for ourselves. So, yeah, I know.
I'm like digesting all of that going, yeah, okay.
So we're each and every one of us, we are apex predators, right? We are the most dangerous, most intelligent animals on the planet. And each of us is the product of 10,000 successful generations of survival and adaptation. You're here because the last 10,000 iterations of your genetic code made it work. Whatever the world threw at your ancestors, they survived. They gathered enough calories to have kids and protect those kids until they could gather enough calories and have kids for themselves, okay? They succeeded in a world that no longer exists, a world of scarcity and violence. So we have a lot of tools in our heads that are prepared, that are there to help us to survive in a world of scarcity and violence. Meanwhile, we don't live with scarcity or violence. We're in now, relatively speaking, the most peaceful time in all of human history, present conflicts included, right? Notwithstanding, we're not where we should be, but we're definitely not where we were 1,000 or even 100 years ago. So one of the things that our ancestors have not prepared us for is complexity. We're not prepared for complexity or convenience. For example, like the idea that you can eat 3 times a day, that's only about 100 years old. That you can eat whatever you want 3 times a day, it's about 30 years old. That you can get it in 30 minutes or it's free, that's about a decade, right? So our ancestors had no idea what to do with that level of convenience and complexity. Like my dad, I think in the 80s when he was in his management role, this was before the internet and before, disconnected phones. All of our phones were on wires at that time, but he would have had maybe 200 to 300 human interactions every day. And now we're averaging close to 4,500 in the developed world. Yeah, you are averaging 4,500 human interactions every day.
That's insane.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have an upper limit that says, hey, idiot, you're taking on too much complexity. It's going to hurt you. Because none of our ancestors had to deal with that. So they didn't develop a kind of red flag. There's no red flag saying this is it. That's the most you can possibly take on. No. So we're constantly putting things on our task list because of FOMO. We're constantly inviting new complexity. We're constantly inviting new relationships. And meanwhile, we know cognitively we're only able to handle about 250 acquaintances at any given time. And then people start falling off. And for those of you who are as old as I am, you know that like you're forgetting now the names of people that you cared about deeply. And you're wondering why? Why am I becoming, is it dementia? Is it early? No, it's not early onset dementia. You have an upper limit to the number of people you can hold because none of your ancestors had to ever deal with more than 250 people their entire lives. You're not prepared for this level of connectivity and choice and convenience and complexity. We're not ready for this. So in order to maintain focus, we have to put limits on that, and they have to be consciously applied limits. And that is where undistractable comes in. I help you to prioritize what really does need to be prioritized. And I help you to set consciously applied limits to the complexity and convenience that you're going to allow into your life.
That aspect on the sort of remembering people's names. I remember until I became cabin crew, I felt like I was kind of good at remembering names.
Yeah.
And then throughout crew, I lost it. But then we were meeting so many people every week on new flights that it got to the point that it went in one ear and out the other.
That's right.
And I knew the person opposite me, which you're supposed in an emergency so you can call on them. And that was the one name that I remembered. And I was like, has it been ever since then? Or it is just that we can't remember?
It's not just you.
Yeah.
Everybody. I'm sure all of you are feeling this. Like, yeah, I started to think deeply about that and about why I was forgetting the names of people that I cared deeply about. And it occurred to me that we're just not designed for the world that we've built for ourselves. We're designed for a world that is very, very much more challenging than this world is. The challenges that we have now are abundance challenges. We have too much food, and so we eat ourselves to death. We have too much complexity, and so we take on too many opportunities and we burn out. You know why we burn out? Because the world is too good. There are too many good things to do. And that's the problem, is not that you're saying no to bad things. You're not saying no to bad things. You're saying no to good things, and you feel bad about that.
Yeah.
Right? But there are just there are many more good things to do every day than can ever be done. And that's the truth. And it's a horrible, cold truth. Maybe it's a warm truth. Maybe that's the warmth of it, is that the world is so abundant and so incredible, and we have access to so much technology and healthcare and communications and opportunity that our ancestors never had access to. The world is so good. It's so good. We're drowning in its goodness, right? We need water to survive, but if that's all we're breathing, then we're not going to survive for long, right? So there's that kind of recognition that I am going to finish my life at some point. I will close my eyes and never open them again. And there will be many, many, many good things I will have left undone. And that is the nature of it. Was it macabre? Is it too morose for you? No, I think
there's but it's reality.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And we shouldn't shy away from that point of that is reality. And
quite the opposite. I think that should energize us.
Yeah,
I think that should help us to make clear what our priorities actually are.
Yeah.
Because remember, at some point you will close your eyes and you will never ever open them again, right? And you know that we don't know how many days we get in our lives. We just know that once today is gone, we are never ever getting it back. And so I want each of these days to be as meaningful for myself and those around me as I can possibly make it. So whether you're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, or you know, the person from CAFU pumping gas into my car at night. Like, I hope your days are meaningful. I hope the hours that you're spending are meaningful, because you will never, ever get a single one of them back. Yeah. And if we use that as the litmus test for the things that we're doing every day, the task list becomes much more clear for us. Is it meaningful? Does it take me to where I want to go? Is it an echo that I want to be heard after I'm gone? We can use that for prioritization, and then we can separate the good from the great.
I think that's an excellent place to.
Yeah, there we go. That's much better.
It led to that.
Yeah.
I know that there's people listening, either they've heard a snippet or they've watched the whole thing going, right, I want to work with you, or I want to find out more about, you know, your books and stuff. How can they do that?
Yeah, look, Google and I are very good friends. So you can Google me. You can go to corrieblock.com. My parents saw fit to grace me with an incredibly unique spelling of my name.
Yeah.
Yeah, CORRIE block.com.
Yeah.
But yeah, Google me, find me on LinkedIn, send me an email through my website. I'm not difficult to get a hold of.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your wisdom. I know I've got so much from today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Kelly. Cheers.